So we got a couple questions from a client that I would love to hear you kind of pick apart, because I do still feel like people are so overwhelmed at the idea of hiring,
Hmm.
and it's stressful because you don't know what you don't know, and the act of like committing to employees seems like really expensive and committal, and like you could make a ton of mistakes, and what if this happens? And I will say that like being on the other side of it after a significant amount of time, like it does get easier. It's not to say that it's not complicated and that there aren't like a lot of things that are involved in that, but my head has wrapped around it a lot more. But here are a couple of questions from a client. You can pick one that you feel like you are equipped to answer right now, but here's some of the things that she's asking. How much structure is too much structure or freedom, she says, for a new employee versus a contractor? Like that could be a whole conversation. How do you scale a business that depends on your client interaction, like with coaching?
Sure.
Where do you hire if that's how you serve? How do you prepare your business for your first hire? So she's thinking a lot about structures. And then when do you know that you are ready to hire?
That I think those are like at least 4 hours worth of
Yep. Yep.
conversations.
So just the podcast
Okay,
version.
so in terms of some things to be thinking about, let's talk about, I guess, structure first. I think it's essential to be, as you're working, and if you're thinking about hiring as a growth mechanism rather than just a freeing up your time, because I think that's what most people want. I think what you have to decide, though, from a structure perspective, is first and foremost, what can you afford? And sometimes what you can afford is only what's going to give you more time. You may not be
Mhm.
able to afford what's going to grow your business. And I think that's a hard, that feels frustrating. Like, but you likely, and here's my experience with it. You likely, if you can afford only to free up your time initially, then you will be the growth mechanism. You free up your time, then you are the person that's growing the revenue, doing the other
Yeah.
work, because now
It
you
took
have the
us years to get someone on the team that actually helped us with growth.
Yes,
Yeah.
it took a lot of time. And so I would not panic if that's the state you're in, because
Right.
it's okay to simply give space back to yourself, because I think you would be surprised when you are attempting to manage every department and every aspect of your business, how that you likely are doing many of these jobs poorly and you're not really accepting that that's true. And so, because of that, you continue to hold on to everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes it getting done 80% as well as you would have done it,
Yeah.
but the amount of time it frees up is going to be more beneficial to you long term. And so,
Well, I would start to look at the areas, and this is just me making an assumption based on the season of clients that we have right now and the conversations we've been having.
sure.
This may not be true forever, and it may not be true for you. However, I do feel like most business owners
Uh-huh.
struggle with follow through. So the
100%.
reason why you and I are so successful is because where I struggle with follow through, you excel at.
Mhm.
And so we are able to vision and come up with cool ideas and move forward with them and delegate and follow through to completion, not only because of that's one of your skills, but we also have the team to support it. Now, what I see happening a lot with clients is that if you are a one person show and you like have great conversations with potential clients and connectors, and you get on the phone with discovery calls or you get that proposal, you struggle with the follow through of wrapping up those conversations to turn it into something, or wrapping up this client to get your final invoice, or following through with this conversation to move this forward, right?
Well,
You
because you
can
don't have the
start,
time, like, because you're
right,
so worried about the next thing,
right. Which
and
makes sense. But so I would look at where you're following off that's literally leaving money on the table. I can't tell you how many service providers we've seen where I'm like, honey, you have an invoice for how much work this year because you just like forget or you don't have time or you don't have the systems in place. Like that would be well worth your money to bring in someone that's just
Mhm.
going to be the person coming behind you and like sending that email and sending that proposal and poking this person and doing these things, like if that's what gets you paid.
Right. I do think it's important to think about where are you operating in your business, and you've gotten to the point where you're just like kind of over or resenting pieces of the puzzle,
Yeah.
because the over or resenting it, one of two choices have to be made. Like, is it just no longer serving you and you need to let it go and like actually cut it off? Or are you starting to ignore an essential piece of your business that is
Mm-hmm.
hurting you because you're ignoring it? And I think more often than not, solopreneurs will have a piece of the puzzle that and maybe not even intentionally, but they are doing just enough to get by, but it's not as much as it could be that would really give them the ultimate
Yeah.
result there. And so
Yeah.
like I was getting to the point, and just to give you an example so I think you can feel better. With email,
Mm.
email got so bad that I had volunteer organizations that I was working with that started calling me asking if I was okay because I was no longer responding.
Yeah.
And like it was such a I got so overwhelmed and so drained and so like I couldn't I couldn't talk to anyone.
Yeah.
And so I know that seems like a really extreme example, but then you might end up where you're like, well, it's so far gone. I'm just like following up with a potential client. It's
Yeah.
so far gone. It's been so long since I touched base with them. I'm just going to pretend like we never had that discovery call
Right.
conversation.
Right. Right. Right.
And so like where are you kind of failing yourself or failing
Where
your
are
own
you
process?
ghosting places in your business, right?
Yeah. And
I still
especially
have,
if specifically leaving the money on the table.
yes,
Because even if it's not growing, if
right.
it just meant that you had a better
You're
experience for people,
getting
so you're getting more quality
paid.
referrals
Yeah,
and you were getting paid
exactly.
appropriately,
I
then
saw
I
this
think,
funny TikTok where this person, true or not, this definitely sounds like something I would do. They came back from mat leave, so they were
uh
gone for however long.
sure.
They come back and they pull up their work inbox, and there's a shit ton of emails in there, right? And they just select all, delete.
Oh no.
And
Oh no.
they said, if the person really wanted to reach out, they'll reach back out. And I'm like, that is how I live my life.
Well,
And
and
Abby hates it.
oh, well, and so anyway, I have lots of things to say about
She's
that.
trauma. I've triggered her.
So it's that the way you're saying that though, regardless if it's email for you or not, there is probably somewhere in your business where you're like essentially doing the select all
Yeah,
delete.
select all, delete.
Like,
Yeah.
and so I want you to just think about, where are you letting yourself down? Where are you letting your clients down? Where are you not following through on something?